subjective studies according to whatever I research. And so today I start with theater of power, which is of course very popular not only in Poland. But if you go to the early Renaissance Poland, it's the very important time for Polish people. You can see here the Poland was extremely large territory. Actually, it was not a Poland itself. It was a commonwealth of Polish and Lithuanian people. And this Duchess of Litva is yellow here, and this whitish is Polish kingdom. They together created extremely large area, not only in terms of land, but also in people. Here you can have how it was in terms of modern countries. So this Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth was covering modern Latvia, Lithuania, Belarus, Ukraine, Russia, this small part here, and of course Poland, and part of Russia here also. And so the territory in 1619, the largest as it was, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, formerly known as the Kingdom of Poland and the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, was established as a single entity by the Union of Lublin. Lublin is the south city here in Poland. In July 1st, 1569. In the early 17th century, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth was one of the largest and most populous countries in Europe, comprising about 1 million square kilometers of land with a population of some 12 million people. Poles, 4.5 million, Ukrainians, 3.5, Belarusians, 1.5, Lithuanian, 0.75 million, Prussians the same, Jews 500,000, and Latvians also 500,000. And this is also the time where the first important Polish poet appears, Jan Kochanowski. This is for our cultural identity groundbreaking event. Jan Kochanowski was born in 1530 and 54 years later he dies. Renaissance poet who wrote in Latin. Sorry I'm reading this, but I have this tendency of digression, and I would never end any subject if I would not have kind of direction guiding. So I will read this just to give you a little bit of order. So he was writing as well in Latin as in Polish, and he was also translating from ancient Greek. He established, this is important thing, he established poetic patterns for Polish literature and was the first Slavic author of attained excellence on European scale. He was really at the time famous, he was respected also outside Poland. At the University of Padua in Italy in the 1550s, he studied ancient Greek and translated fragments of Homer, Euripides into Polish. Actually, a very brilliant translation. Unfortunately, he never managed to translate the whole play. From about 1563, he served as a secretary to King Sigismund II Augustus. He accompanied the king to the Sejm of 1569. Sejm is just like the parliamentary meeting in Lublin, and this is the meeting which enacted the Union of Lublin, formally establishing the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. So he was one not only of these witnesses, but also of co-creators of this large Commonwealth. And next, he was a very prolific writer. He created the first canon of Polish literature. When I was in elementary school, I had to memorize many of his poetry, which is old Polish language, but still extremely beautiful. And so that's our just like the essential education. In years 1562-66, he writes Szachy, chess. This is the first Polish language humorous epic or heroic comic poem. In 1578, he writes the dismissal of the Greek envoys, odprawa posłów greckich, the first Polish tragedy, written probably between 65-66. This is actually call to arms in the face of the serious conflict with Russia's Tsar, Ivan the Terrible. And this dismissal of the Greek envoys, of course, this is about the Trojan War. The action happens in Troya, where the Greeks are coming and requesting beautiful Helen to return. 1579, he writes or translates in Polish Psalterz Dawidów. This is, of course, biblical David's Psalter, one of the most beautiful translations in the modern languages. In 1518, his beloved daughter, Ursula, or Urszula in Polish, she dies. And he writes a series of 19 elegies, lamentations. This was one of our elementary education poems that we were memorizing. Beautiful, and exactly, he is kind of bringing spirit to Polish language. And epigrams in 1584. 294 short poems written during 60s and 70s, published later in 3 volumes. So he was extremely prolific. For us, of course, the most important is this dismissal of the Greek envoys. The first performance was on January 12, 1578. And this is the cover of the original publication. This play, the tragedy, was performed in Warszawa's, the Polish capital at the time, Ujazdów Castle, at the wedding of the aristocrat, very important person at the time, Jan Zamoyski, and his second wife, Krystyna Radziwiłł. These are the most famous, the most prominent Polish aristocratic families. The King Battery was in attendance, and the highest clerics of the church, the most important people were invited. This was the kind of political event. The play was directed by royal physician and philosopher Wojciech Oczko. He was actually one of the founders of the Polish medicine. After the play, the royal singer with a lute, probably Krzysztof Klabon, sang in Latin Kochanowski song Orpheus Sarmaticus, Latin about the Orpheus, who is a Polish nobleman. And so, more about this play. Following an event mentioned in Homer's Iliad, the titular Greek envoys arrive at Troy to prevent the outbreak of hostilities. The envoys request the return of the kidnapped Helena, the wife of the king of Sparta, Menelaus. Wise statesmen in Troy, led by Antenor, a role model for civic virtue, support such an action. Still, in the end, they are overruled by a demagogue, Ikeaton, and a more vocal faction led by Helen's abductor, Paris. In the last 4th episode, Trojans reject the Greek request, and Ulysses utters the ominous words: O nierządne królestwo i zginienia bliskie, O anarchic kingdom and near annihilation. A few months after the premiere, at the beginning of 1578, same Polish parliament was to adopt taxes on the war with Russia. Here are quotes, the last verses of the dismissal. As I remind you, this is in attention, is in front of the king, of the most important politician at the time. So Kochanowski was not entertaining, he was intervening. We should prepare for the war with Russia. We Polish people, we have just like permanent problem with these Russians. They are always at the border. They are always doing something bad for us. So the last verses of the dismissal uttered by this virtual antenor, a supporter of peace, although addressed to the Trojans, actually sounded ominous and were addressed to the politician and to the king, battered in Polish. Bo radźmy też o wojnie, nie wszystko się brońmy. Radźmy jako kogo bić, lepiej niż go czekać. And I was trying to translate a little bit, but still it's impossible. Well, let's also talk about the war. Let's not think about defending only. Let us advise how to beat someone. It is better than waiting for him. And after that was this Latin song to the lute, sang by Klabon probably immediately after the play. And this was a real call to arms. Quae spes ocives, quae mens in pectore vestor est. What hope, O citizens? What mind is in your breast? It is not laziness, it is not, believe me, sleep. So go to action. Russians are at the border. The most interesting modern production, this was of course staged many times in Poland. The most interesting modern production was by the director Zadara, Michał Zadara. Here is his portrait. He reversed the order in the classical theater building. The audience was sitting on the stage and the action partially was taking place on the audience. And so he was using, as you can see, these modern projections. And there was one DJ who was scrapping the LPs. This was the music for this. Unfortunately, he is a very brilliant thinker, extremely powerful intellectual. He has wonderful ideas, but he has some problems with working with actors. Probably he is a little bit autistic or something, because sometimes when the actor or actress is not doing the role according to the circumstances, well, he's not helping. And so some actors were doing modern theater, not psychological as this whole thing requires. Some actors left alone was doing psychological shit. And so it was kind of so-so performance, but the idea was brilliant. This tragedy by Kochanowski was so brilliant. It was so good written, and it was so powerful in images that next Polish poets were just humiliated by it. And it's a funny situation. Nobody really had kind of balls to write next tragedy. And for next hundreds years, we actually have no Polish tragedy. Nobody was courageous enough to stand this kind of comparison with Kochanowski's tragedy. This was so brilliant. And this is very, for us, for Polish history of theater, very bad situation that we have one island, this amazing masterpiece, which is perfectly using language. It's not only using language very well, but it also creates metrical pattern for Polish poetry. So Kochanowski was not only using the traditional Polish poetry, versifications and meter, but also being very aware that meter is so important in ancient Greek drama. He was inventing few new meters. And so he gave us not only beautiful Polish language, but also rhythmical patterns that later will be used by next poets. And we have to wait very long to next tragedy. And so this is one of the staging. And the most important part in this performance was a lady who actually is mother of the son of Zadara. I don't know, because they are not married. I don't know. These people are always in very strange relationship. So she's one of the best Polish actors. Wysocka is her name. And she's playing Horus. And this image of one character being assassinated, and she is just using the bucket with the red paint, and she's just streaming over his body, this red paint. And on the white stage, this is the symbol of Polish colors. Red and white are just like the signal of Polish identity. And so this became very important image that this is about the Polish problem. We are still confronting our enemies. And here are a few images. Of course, after Ukrainian war started in 21, 22, this is the image of the Theater Academy here in Wrocław. They were also experimenting with this Kochanowski play. And they totally destroyed the text. This is now called to arms. If Ukraine is suffering today, probably tomorrow Polish people will be suffering, or whoever knows who next. And so this whole idea is that everybody is the same. During the war, identity is erased. You are not individual. You are just like, if you look at these Russian soldiers, for example, in Ukraine now, you can see they have no faces. They are just like mass people being sacrificed for some strange ideas. And here the individual identity is totally lost or simply not important. And so their faces are covered with the mask. These two ladies, they are bringing Ukrainian rape victims to this play. Of course, all this is very modern interpretation, but still this Polish text works amazingly in the context of recent developments. And so this is the Menelaus. You will see in a moment part of this. So these are students of Theater Academy. And because in the war, language actually is not important, because there's no time for dialogue, it's time for violence. And so that's why the words spoken here are totally not important. The body movements are crucial. Here is Menelaus, who is on his ship coming to Troy. These are two ladies who are chorus, and they are kind of bringing the dangers in the context. So you can see the example of the modern performers in the theater acting school in Poland. How interesting they are. This is short, this is only 20 minutes. I will not bother you with the whole thing, but and this is antenna. Here, Menelaus is bringing his throne to Troy. Menelaus is a weak. This is the weak brother of the king Agamemnon, who was the stronger general. The actor who is doing this, of course, monologue, he is calling to war, calling to arms. All the music is made by his mouth. So he's just like the Polish rapper. He's recording also rap music. The war is coming. And this is Alexander, the beautiful Paris. Here. He is opposing returning of beautiful Helena to Greeks. And this is beautiful Helena. In this staging, she is just like the ghost of Helena, with two faces. You will see. One face is the mask, which is at the back of her head, and in a moment you will see the second face of her. So she is just like this creature, nothing beautiful about her. So the language was destroyed. The war destroys the language. The war destroys the regular communication channels. These two ladies are victims of the rape. And that is the exam. And here are the heads of the professors who are supposed to grade the students. And because this is this Polish classical text. After there was this huge discussion, but we couldn't understand each word. And when I was trying to explain to them that this is the idea, that you don't understand the words when the war is coming, when the violence is here and now, there is no time for discussion, no time to understanding each other. Now we have to fight. And so it goes like that for 20 minutes. But just to give you an example, what it means today to be creative in a theater, how you can deal with very classical, very pathetic drama and adapt this to the modern situation. And this was the choice made by these young people who decided that in times of the Ukrainian war, you have to do something more than just stand in an elegant way and recite the classical verses. The verses are being born just like from the stomach, this cry. And all the time, the Helen or the ghost, the kind of creature that became Helen, is dancing to the words that happened to be spoken or shouted by these people. This was the greatest challenge for these professors of classical theater. to grade the students. And funny thing is, because you cannot see the face, they were totally confused who is doing what, and everybody get 4. 4 is just like in the middle of. So, the whole idea of the mask was taken for the experiment that we did with the students. We were doing with psychologists from the Institute of Psychology here at the university this huge international research with more than 100,000 recipients to check if there is something universal in the theater, in the traditional theater choreography movement. And first, we would ask people to watch 50-second clips from different dances. This is the war dance from Rwanda. And next, we would ask actors to be totally anonymous with masks and the same costumes and make this clip in few rhythmical movements. And we will ask this almost 130,000 recipients all over the world if they could recognize, is it the war dance, is this erotic dance, or what? And so this is the research which is still going on because this is global research. And so that's why we had this mask. The power of religion, which of course I was always, many times I was just like mentioning in the first hour meeting that the religion was a very important part of this performative history of Polish people, but still very important are markers. Any gathering of humans that people come together for any reasons, could be economical reason, always was accompanied by kind of religious performances. And unfortunately, we don't have many of these testimonies because of these disasters, these wars, these invasions that we experienced as a Polish people. And so many of these documents were burned, destroyed. One that survived is this play, which is amazingly important for many reasons. It's called Image of the Death of the Blessed John the Baptist. Jakub Gawatowicz was the author of the play. It was performed at the market in a very small city, Kamionka Strumiłowa, near modern Tarnów, in 1619, with 2 intermedia in old Ukrainian language. This is the earliest testimony of the Ukrainian drama. These 2 intermedia are extremely funny. Of course, these are peasants, and one is clever and smart, and 2 or 3 of accompanying him friends are stupid, and he is manipulating them. My favorite one is this. They have one in Polish pierog, just like pie, but they have only one. And so how to manage, and they are free. How can we eat this? And so and this smart one says, let's say that we go to sleep, and whoever will have better dream, this one will get the pie. And of course, they go to sleep, but only 2 of them actually are sleeping. The one, the smart one, is just eating the pie. And so that's kind of, humor. And the second one is also about the one smart and very bad character who is tricking the very honest merchant, taking all this object of him and making him being beaten. And so this kind of, that the sense of humor was in humiliating one another, which for us is very controversial today, but still, this was this intermediate at the time. And the play itself is very classical, nothing really interesting. This guy, Saint John the Baptist, he, for the whole play, has these monologues. And this is an example of his kind of lesson to the people. He thunders, "O lizard nation, how long will you wait in sins? How long will you be giving birth to ungodly iniquity? Why do you not know, you creature? Why do you not keep the paths and his command? And it goes like this forever. The modern staging, very, very rarely it was staged in Polish history of theater. The most recent staging by the theater Chorea, in which post-Gotowski theater, people who are using bodies as a source of the theater acting, and as you can see, very beautiful images, but the staging itself, I would say, so. Another example of this religious power of religion are preachers. And probably one of the most, in terms of theater, interesting preacher was Tomasz Młodzianowski. As you can see, this is 7th century. He thunders in one of his sermons. The woman came to her confessor and confessed with great tears that she had sinned by lewd touching herself. And she was confessing on such an occasion that the devil was croaking behind the wall. And 3 times he cried with a great roar, "Fy, fy, fy, fa, fa." So theater is used here as a kind of lesson to be learned, and many of these preachers' sermons were using this kind of theatrical imagination that the devil comes, or in one sermon he is speaking about the body, that you touch yourself, your body deteriorates, your body is partially destroyed, is rotten, and this kind of images that should make impression or shock people. And this power of religion is still in Poland today. Look here, Polish pilgrimages in 2016. 500 religious centers are visited by 7 million Poles each year. Here you have this main center. Unfortunately, it's not a good image in this slide, but you can see in this, the word, this means 1,000. So you got 1.5 million in Krakow, in Kalwaria Zbrodowska, almost 1 million. And so as you can see, these sanctuaries for these pilgrimages are all over the Poland. Of course, the most populous is the middle, the center, Częstochowa. Częstochowa is something like spiritual capital of Poland, with this monastery and huge church, with this image of this Holy Mother Maria, which is for us the most sacred religious image. And so this is religious power in action. The processions are going all over the Poland like that, and they are always identified with Polish, as you can see, symbols. And so this is the conservative Poland, which identifies Polish nation or Polish identity with Catholic religion, which of course is extremely problematic. But if you look at Częstochowa and the amount of people visiting this Częstochowa, 4 million people a year, this is a really strong and powerful power. And this is still going on. So this Poland is very still a religious country in a way. And we have many calvaries, and so stages for the Passion of Christ. You can see this spots everywhere in Poland. There is a space which is being used as a stage for the Passion. And the most famous, of course, is in Kalwaria Zbrodowska. This is in the southeast Poland. The Way of the Cross, or Via Crucis, in Kalwaria Zbrodowska, once in a year, is attended by thousands of people, and this is powerful Passion theater. There is always the greatest respect for the person who offers himself to portray the Christ, because sometimes the soldiers are really beating the person. This is something that we know from the Philippine Islands. It happens all over the world, but still in Poland, in many places, this is visited by mass attendance, and of course, theatricality of this is very spectacular. They have costumes for the soldiers. These are historical costumes, which of course are not correctly historical, but still they pretend to be the ancient. And the person who performs the cries is really humiliated, and it has to go all this way up to the Golgotha, up to the Calvaria. And very often the attendance of this performance is made by the sect of the most radical Catholics. You can see here they have special coats with the image of the Christ the King. These are soldiers of the King, the Christ the King. And so these people are always busy in protesting against blasphemous theater, against anything that is to be protested. And of course, the most funny thing is that they have usually they have no idea what they are against. They are just called to action. There are some politicians who are using them as a kind of private army. And whenever you don't like a situation of art or whatever, you call them, and they are just coming with these powerful images on the back of the Christ the King, and they are singing religious songs. It looks like, of course, they have kind of agency, but it's not. And another, of course, event that created spectacular religious movement, which is also theatrical. It's this disaster in Smolensk. In 10th April 2010, Polish airplane with 96 people on the board crashed and collapsed, coming from Warsaw to Smolensk. Smolensk is a small village in very important place for Polish history, modern history. Katyn, you can see here. Katyn is the place where the Russian Bolsheviks actually annihilated 22,000 of Polish officers, intelligentsia. They just destroyed Polish upper thinking classes at the brink of the Second World War in 1940, when the Russians co-invaded Poland. And so this is for us the symbol of the Polish martyrdom. The killing off of the intelligentsia was disastrous for the future post-war Poland, because there were only peasants and simple workers to rebuild Poland with no much education. All these educated people, this is something that we know also from modern Cambodia. If you wear glasses, you were guilty and you were sent to this. And so before the Auschwitz, before the concentration camps, we have this place of martyrdom. And the Polish delegation with Polish president and the main Polish politicians and of course church leaders, all this is also stupid, that all these people went to one airplane. So when this airplane crashed, Poland was kind of empty of the government. Everybody who was really important was on this plane. And so this disaster, of course, resulted in the huge movement. This is the place where the parts of the airplane are still there. They are never brought back to Poland. There is this discussion with Russians still going on. But just after this disaster, Polish people raised huge cross in front of the presidential palace in Warsaw. And this cross became the center of the controversy. The people who would raise the cross and who would just like guide the cross would be people with this conspiracy theories. It was not accident, this was assassination. The Russian government, Putin, killed our president and our best man in the government. No accident, because if you would say that this was accident, it would be that Polish people were stupid enough to risk so much as to kill themselves. But we don't have this kind of interpretation. They say it's impossible, and there was even later commission, but just at the early stages of this, there was confrontation always. On one side, there were people who were mocking, who were joking. It was stupid, accident. And the believers in this conspiracy, they were using always Polish symbols of religious importance, just like this Christ, this Holy Mother. And as you can see here, there is this count manifestation, which are just joking, making fun of these cross believers. And it took many months. The soldiers, the police were asked to guide and to kind of protect the cross. And it took, I think, 1.5 years till the cross was removed. And this was the place of the permanent theater productions. The young people would improvise the ones they built from the beer cans, the same cross like this on the opposite side of the street. So there was an ideological war where the theater was kind of tool used by both sides. And of course, Catholics protest against the blasphemous place, which is now it's not so present in Poland, but a few years ago you would have like this, people opposing Wyspiański. Wyspiański is a classical poet from the beginning of the 20th century, and he wrote this place Curse, which was presented at the Theatre Powszechny in Warszawa in 2017. And this Croatian, born in Bosnia-Herzegovina director, Oliver Frljić, who is very famous of provoking, of shocking, he produced the play where Polish problems of this violence used in the name of the Christ, in the name of religion, the cross becomes the machine gun, and in the middle of the play, because the subject matter of the curse is the illegal child who was born to the priest, and priest is rejecting the situation, is trying to cover up, and the lady who gave birth to the child is being sentenced by the villagers to commit suicide. And so it's just like this huge accusation of this male system which is victimizing ladies. And this is time where all this, not only Me Too movement, but also all these secrets of the church, where the misusing of the children, sexual humiliation of the children in Polish church is extremely big problem. All this came up, and we started national discussion about the behavior of the priest, about all this which was totally covered up for a long time, and still is the problem in Poland. And so, in the middle of the play, the director asked some real victims of the priest to come up and to say their testimony. And so the play was not exact staging of the classical drama, it was staging of the problem of the church who is not controlling their priest, who are misusing human, especially children. And so this was opposed by this religious movement. Again, another protest in Wrocław. Here, Jelinek, the famous Nobel Prize amazing writer from Austria, who is attacking Austria's system, and she also is very sensitive for the fate of modern female. So she wrote the play, which is called in Polish Śmierć I dziewczyna, the death and the girl. And this was staged in Wrocław here in very radical way. The director, lady, Marciniak, her name is, she invited sexual workers from Prague to make live sex on the stage. And the director, who was the boss of this theater, Mieszkowski, his name is, at the time he was starting his political career. Now later he was in Polish parliament, and so he made this career. And so he was looking for a trampoline for his political career to start up. And he used this gossip of the sexual intercourse on the stage, real sexual intercourse, as a kind of advertisement of the play. And he was, of course, very aware that it will create problem with the conservative government. The government was opposing, there was a huge discussion, there was also a time to stop the premiere. The premiere did happen, but of course people were opposing the theater, and just after that the theater was annihilated by the Catholic government. The director used this huge noise that was made by this performance to start his political career, and he left this theater for the politicians, who were, of course, introducing very random person to direct the theater, and the message of this person was annihilate the theater group that was political, so opposing the government. And so the actors were removed. This was at the time the best Polish theater company and one of the best in Europe. The theater was compared to the Ostermeyer's Schaubühne in Berlin. So these two theaters were at the time the best Polish directors, the best European directors were working here. We have here in Wrocław actually the best theater group of actors and actresses. Really, today, most of these people, probably 80%, are working in Polish capital because they were really the best, and so they had no problem with their job, so they moved to another theater. But still, it was pity that they destroyed. And now this Polski Teatr is just like the offer for the next political correct person to earn some money for retirement. And so it's nothing artistically really important happens over there, unfortunately. And the last example of these interventions of the religious people is Golgotha picnic. Maybe you know this because this was internationally famous by the Argentina director Rodrigo Garcia. Rodrigo Garcia, he is controversial. For example, in one of his plays, he was asked to watch how a performer is cooking a crab. And so crab, of course, is not moving much, it's not shouting, it's just like dying in silence. But this was his performance. And so we have problems with him, because I don't know if this is too much or maybe shouldn't be used, this kind of suffering of animals as a performance in theater. Of course, he had ideas that he is accusing society, what a consumptive society, of course, blah, blah, but still. And in Wrocław, actually, when he was doing this crab cooking performance, the performance was interrupted. The audience stopped this. Motherfucker, go! And the performer was so afraid that he ran away. And so they took and they rescued the crab. And the crab is still alive, maybe. And so, but this was the Golgotha picnic, where the Jesus Christ was the HIV positive person. So he was dying of this very, very cruel disease. And of course, he was an LGBT person, which offended Christians, because Jesus Christ could be only male, super male, macho, not kind of weak person with the positive HIV. And this was, of course, playing games. The Christ, it was not even like this musical Jesus Christ Superstar. It was just like mocking, just like really. But again, according to Garcia, this whole production was attack on the consumer, against the consumptive society. But back to the medieval age. Now the chapter 3, games with power. The earliest evidence that we have of these games with power is something that comes from the early 13th century. In 1207, Pope Innocent III condemned the excesses in Poland, especially in Polish Church. A Papa response to license. This is the English translation from Latin. From time to time, theatrical entertainments are put on in these same churches, and not only are masked shows, monstra larvarum, introduced into them as playful spectacles, but also in 3 feasts of the year which follow directly after the nativity of Christ. Deacons, priests, and sub-deacons in turn, exercising their scandalous stupidities through the obscene revelings of their behavior, make clerical dignity worthless in the sight of the people. These games that the clerics played once in a year, reversing the order, that the clerics were just like misbehaving because they would be in charge, they would be mocking the priest. This is something that we know from many places in Europe. This is just like this security system in Polish also church, that you give people once in a year a day to make mockery in order to control them even better later. So this is this moment of permitted scandalous behavior, but only if we are the church controlling your misbehavior. And so, and this is the earliest such a testimony in European church, not only in Poland. This is something that is the earliest testimony of misbehavior or theatrical. For us, it's interesting that they are using mask. This monstra larvarum, this is even the better translation would be the mask of the creature, the mask of the monsters. And so the monstrous mask. So this was probably something that was inherited from some ancient performing art practices. We don't know how this survived in Poland. In terms of games with the power, much later, this is 16th century, 17th century, the person who is called in German cultural regions Eulenspiegel, and in English this is Mirror. We have in Polish very different name for this, Sowizdżał. These were poor young students, usually clerical students, who were earning some money by doing some performances on the villages. They would travel across the country, doing some jokes, making some funny situations. Of course, sometimes they would not only mock the religious institution, but also empower. They would try to teach the religious lessons. So actually we have so rich testimonies of this behavior that there is no one simple way of explaining this. And few examples of this text survived our time. This is the most famous and the earliest one, so-called Presbytery Expedition. It was written around 1590. This is the historical context of this. The Congress in Łęczyce, in September 20th, 1589, ordered each clergyman to send one well-dressed armed horseman from every 10 volocks. One volock is 18 hectares. To the war against the Mongols. In the play, a miserly and demoralized priest prepares his parish servant, Albertus, to be sent to war. The parson fiercely bargains with the vendettarz, trash dealer, and the roztrucharz, horse dealer. Ultimately, he buys broken spurs, wooden stirrups, worn out weapons, and an old stubborn horse. So the priest is sending his student actually to die, because there is no way he can survive. And this is the comedy very often presented in Polish stage. This is one of the modern staging, and this is the poster. You can see that's the disastrous equipment this poor soldier has. And more about Albertus. So, that's first is the so-called Wyprawa Plebańska, Presbyterian exhibition. A stingy priest and cunning traders send Albertus to a certain death. We think he will never return. But miraculously, Albertus in the next play is coming home from the war. Albertus wraca z wojny in Polish. Albertus manages just fine in the war, avoids battles, very smart, and entertains his comrades with songs. Appears that he discovered himself as the wonderful improvisational performer. The new minstrel comedy, Komedia Rybałtowska Nowa, after the war, Robertus amazes all with his intellect. We have a series of short comedies or plays where Albertus is main character. And so the story of Albertus is just like this exemplary story of the clever peasant who at the beginning seems to be stupid and idiot, a simpleton who will never survive in the cruel world. But it appears that he is not so stupid, he is very smart, and he knows how to use other people. And at the end, in this comedy, new comedy, he appears to be intellectually so mature that he's advising the generals, everybody looks for his advice. So this kind of humor and typical character, which is very popular in Poland in this time. The actors, this is another, in my opinion, one of the most interesting play. Of course, I will not bother you with all this plays, but this is probably the most interesting play, because this is the play where the actors has to destroy the division between the stage and the audience. The whole play is performed in the real home of real people. In order to stage this play, you have to invade real people apartments. And all this happens in the real people apartment. And of course, this is the play with the message. And we know that this medieval theater was also kind of the way to evangelize the people. The religious message had to be not only publicized, but kind of empowered and injected in the audience. And the best way to inject this religious lesson is to invade your private space and to create the theater spectacle in your own world. And this is why in many medieval performances, for example, I was studying much better in the English early medieval theater, and in England, for example, they are using modern costumes in order to place the action of the passion in the world of the actual audience. This has to be happening here and now. And you are not the tourist. You can always intervene. And many times in this place, the actor, performer, is addressing the spectator this amazing remark. Please do not interrupt. Please do not intervene. So if you are witnessing the martyrdom of Christ on the cross, and somebody says to you, but please do not intervene, the suggestion is that you can stop this, that actually you can save Christ from death on the cross. And so something happens in your brain. Your brain at least is boiling. What to do? Who am I in this situation? And so this is typical for this kind of invasion. Maciej Bisiewski is the author who is Very little known beside this text. We don't know much about the guy. He wrote a comedy about the village leader. In Polish, village leader is called still today sołtys. I couldn't find English translation for the word sołtys. It's just like the person who is leader of the village. And this is traditional name, sołtys. So this is about such a sołtys and his wife. It was written in 1617. The actors entered a private home of villagers, sat down at the table and mixed with those living in the house. In the second act, a peasant's house was turned into a school, where the examiner torments undergrads so they can be priests. In the third act, the private house became an Orthodox church. In the fourth act, devils came out from behind the stove. They were beating each other with flails and scattered ash all over the room. So they created chaotic disaster. And so, as you can see, the apartment, the home of the peasants became a church, became a school, and at the end was destroyed. This kind of lesson was provided by this humorous act. And again, the continuity, modern continuity of this game with power is the Orange Alternative movement. This is an amazing movement which contributed to the collapse of the socialism in Poland. The end of this PRL, this communistic government, and this strange Russian controlled ruling of Poles actually ended with strong contribution of this movement. They did something which was totally unprecedented in Poland especially. They treated the system of violence, the police, the soldiers, as performers in a play. And they treated Poland as a kind of stage for the national play. And so, if these are actors who are doing their act, we can play games with this. We do not treat them seriously. We do not address policemen with a fear. No, we treat them as actors in a bad comedy. And so, first act of this movement was to cover, and this did happen in Wrocław. And actually, this is the time of the martial law in Poland, and so the Polish government actually closed Poland as kind of zoo. We were unable to move from one place to another without the permission, so this martial law was to keep us in a kind of cages, and so the Polish government declared the war against its nation. And so this also was economical, very disastrous for us, because the mobility of the humans were restricted. Of course, the economy was collapsing, and nothing was in the shops. We were living in very, very poor times at the time, and the cities were very sad. There was no money to paint the walls, and so all these grey Wrocław walls suddenly, one night, were covered by these colorful dwarfs. No political statement, nothing against the government, nothing, just funny dwarfs. Later, it started in one night in the summer of 1982. The person whose name is Friedrich, he looked like this at the time, Waldemar Friedrich. He was a student at the University of Wrocław, and his master thesis was about the graffiti in Polish toilets. So he was shocking, he was an external person. He called himself a mayor, a commander of the Breslau Festung, of the fortress of Wrocław. And he created movement among the college students, or even elementary school students, and of course university, polytechnic students, but mostly it was done by the young people, just like teenager movement. There were making fun. They were just like not treating the violent system with respect. They were not recognizing the violence, the power of the police. They were laughing and they were making jokes and they were not making direct political statements. So it was very difficult to accuse them. And Waldek, he was brilliant in escaping, run away. The police couldn't catch him. At the end, of course, they caught him. And I remember this is one of the most funny happenings that they did. And there is this trial. And there is this socialistic, communistic judge, extremely serious, with this voice very low, because he has fucking authority. And he comes to this trial, and please bring this accused person in front of, and of course, he will supposed to sentence him for some, I don't know, long prison time or whatever. But the moment Waldemar appears in front of the judge, the door opens and there are line of ladies, young ladies, girls of course, students of college or whatever, and each girl is pregnant. Of course, this is spectacle, so they have some kind of special way to make this pregnancy very visible. And you see around 20 or 30 girls who are pregnant, and they are coming. We want a death for this guy. He is the father of my kid, and he doesn't want to marry me. Judge, please sentence him to death. We want him to die. And they created such a chaos in the court that, of course, this whole procedure was dismissed. And so this exaggeration, this making or amplifying the situation to absurd result was their instrument of kind of mocking the system or exposing the emptiness of the system. And so here you have few images of these dwarfs around Wrocław, as you can see. And again, funny thing is that one night somebody painted the colorful dwarf. In the morning, the special forces of police were painting the wall white to cover the dwarf. And next night, next dwarf. And of course, we have many European and also from United States televisions who were filming this police who was painting the dwarfs not to make them visible. And the whole point of Friedrich and these children who are doing this movement was to make the police, make the politician the main actors. So the whole point of this was to provoke the police to strange behavior. When there was this National Day of the Secret Service, suddenly here, Rynek, the whole Rynek in the evening is full of these Humphrey Bogart people with the special spy codes, and everybody has a newspaper with a hole inside. And everybody is spying everybody, and everybody is asking everybody for the document. Please show me your documents, please show. And in the middle of this, the real Secret Service comes, and the real Secret Service officers are asking for the documents. Chaos! And suddenly, there is this boss of the Secret Service officers. He has loudspeaker, and he says, please, full Secret Service, stop asking for the documents. This kind of strange things. And so the Secret Service was forced to react, to actually act, to perform something. Just like the police here in Wrocław from one of these, they are standing in a kind of wall, like this ancient Greek hoplites. And they are just prepared to attack whoever will protest or do some procession, whatever do on the street. But suddenly, from one of this big shopping center, this huge Aurora ship. Aurora battleship is the ship that started the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia. And this is just like the paper maquette of the ship. Many children are carrying this, and this ship is just coming out of this shopping center. And so this policemen, they are just like full armed, because this whole thing was to scare these kids. So they have helmets, they have shields, and they are just like really like kind of this monster from these movies. And so, but nobody is really afraid. And suddenly this battleship comes, paper battleship. The policemen, they are armed, but they don't know what to do. And this battleship comes in front of this police wall, and there is one hand with the egg in front of this armed policeman. And also this kind of jokes. And next thing, they are bringing flowers to the policeman, for example. And beautiful girls are coming to policemen, do you want to kiss me? Or something like this. And so they were just like destroying the routine of these violent, systematic soldiers who were prepared to react on violence, but not on love or this kind of behavior. And so, for example, here you have the one of this poster, police in the Wonderland, for example. And so you don't know how to accuse them. What for you could accuse these people? This is a very famous manifestation on the rynek. Precz z pałami. If this guy was turning over, he would bring the word u, and you've got upałami, which means away with the swelter or away with the batons, away with the police violence, this kind of stuff. So one person was standing, and this, so this joke was very popular. And here is the festival of the popes. And this is a funny thing because we have very famous codex of the honor behavior. This is just like the 19th century, something that would teach the aristocratic people to behave in society. And so Major, the boss, commander of the fortress Mirosław, is reading this aloud in front of the police. How you should honorably behave according to this. This is also very funny because there was problem with buying anything. The toilet paper and the sanitary pads were just like the greatest treasure to be found in the shop. There was nothing like this on the market at the time. So these children, they brought, I don't know why, how, probably the mother or whoever was connected could provide them with the rolls of toilet paper and some examples of sanitary pads, and they would handle this for free to the passerbys. And when they started to do this, especially in the toilet paper business, they did this in the Santa Nicolas Day, in the beginning of the December. And everybody was dressed. There are no pictures of this, unfortunately, because this was a very dangerous situation. They were just in this costume and this huge bird of this Saint Nicholas, and they would come on this day of Saint Nicholas to give presents to the passerbys. And the best, of course, and the most searched for was toilet paper. And they have all this hands full of rolls of toilet paper. But they were chained in 8 people, because this police van, they couldn't make inside more than 7 people. So they would chain themselves always in amount of person that one was more than could be placed inside this police van. And when the police were arresting these kids, they couldn't put them inside the van because always one was just like being outside, and they were chained by some kind of iron chains. Police couldn't, so they were just like doing some strange commentaries like that. And so this is the day of the toilet paper. And some other examples of these strange actions. And of course, they would create Bolshevik fights with the white. They would just repeat in this anniversary of the Russian Bolshevik Revolution. They would create this fight between white and red soldiers, and they would, of course, mock these maverick movies today. and they painted faces, they did thank you, police and secret service, for your smile and sense of humor, this kind of stuff. So you cannot accuse person, this is not really political statement. And so very famous was the Rio de Janeiro in Poland, let's make carnival, not. And of course, all this at the end contributed to Polish round table talks and the collapse of this strange Soviet system in Poland. And so this was one of the many, many events that contributed to encourage Poland and to not be afraid, because the whole system was working because we are afraid. And the same was brought to Poland by this Polish Pope. Whatever you think about this Polish Pope, because he is extremely controversial, especially now when we know more about his strange decisions. So, but for us Poles, he was very important because when he had this mass masses where thousands of people were attending on the huge meadows in Krakow, in Warsaw, so he was having one main message: do not be afraid. And so when the system was not making you scary, the system lost its sense. The logical existence of the system disappeared like that. And so, but these young people, especially in Wrocław, this of course radiated, this whole movement radiated to Warsaw, to Poznan, to Krakow. But the center of this orange alternative was Wrocław, especially Rynek here, because here around Rynek we have best Lisa, so colleges, best colleges in not only in Wrocław but also in Poland. So this is the space of very smart young people, and here is university, and so there are some other schools. There is also not far away the acting school. So all this contributed to this performative games with the power. And I'm bringing this because this is something that really succeeded in contributing to the political or cultural change. And so this was my first part of the lecture. I have only 8 minutes, so it's not, I will only show you what will happen next. And so, this is the next part will be devoted to the origins of the public theater in Poland. This is also a very interesting story because this gives me opportunity to bring you political and cultural context. Because this is not, the public theater a few years ago was celebrating its 250-year anniversary. And we have a lot of publications. And so not only devoted to this Polish public theater, but also, for example, to women in theater. Now we have very strong team of the scholars who are publishing and on the internet, so it's free. It's the project is called Hypatia, and for the money of this celebration of the anniversary of 250 years of public theater, we did a lot of good things to kind of recognize, for example, contribution of female artists, not only actresses, but also poets, painters, and everybody who would be involved in theater production. The role of the female actresses in public theater birth in Poland is crucial, because the first performance that we call this opening of the public theater in 1765 actually was possible because some aristocratic ladies decided to do acting. Of course, their husbands were not happy with that, and they were just chasing them. There are a lot of scandals. So I will tell you all about these very piquant stories. And so maybe I will stop on that. So thank you. And if you are sure that you would enroll in this class and you want me to register you, so please use these few left minutes to
Bye-bye.